Hi, my name is Richard Lang. In this film I'm going to invite you to take a fresh look at yourself, a fresh look at your identity. But why should you do this? If someone were to inform you that really you were a king or a queen, and that you own dozens of castles and yachts and so on, wouldn't you want to see if it were true? And if it were true, wouldn't you want to claim your inheritance? Well, there's an ancient body of wisdom that says that who we normally think of as ourselves, the one we see in the mirror, isn't all that we are. That's our public identity, who we are on the outside. We also have a private identity, an inner self, and our inner self is far richer and more powerful than any king or queen. Boundless and timeless, it's the source and container of everything. According to this ancient wisdom, the purpose of life is awakening to our private identity, our inner self. Looking steadily within at our divine nature, we claim our inheritance, eternal peace and unfading joy. Remaining open to this infinitely wise, loving and creative source within us, we find ourselves blessed in countless ways. In this film, I'm not going to ask you to believe this ancient wisdom. Instead, I'm going to invite you to carry out experiments that test it, so that you can see for yourself if this claim about who we really are is true or not. First, I'll rephrase this spiritual claim about our identity in modern physical terms. What we are at center, at zero distance, is nothing like what we are from, say, 4 feet away, or from any range in fact. Science accepts this idea. What things are depends partly on the range of the observer. You're looking at me from a few feet away. From there I'm human, I'm Richard. But if you were to come up to me using microscopes, you'd leave Richard behind and come to a layer of cells. And coming closer, you'd come to a layer of molecules, and then atoms, particles, and so on, down to practically nothing at all. In other words, we have layers like an onion. If instead of zooming in towards me, you were to zoom away from me, then you would view other layers of me. Moving away, you'd find that Richard would be replaced by London, and then by England, then by the planet, the star, the galaxy, and so on. Here's a diagram of these outer layers. We need every one of our layers to exist. To breathe, we need not only our lungs and the cells and molecules that make up our lungs, we also need the rest of life, the atmosphere, the sun, and so on. Though we identify primarily with what we look like from a few feet away, with our human layer, we need every layer. It's one undivided system. Who or what is at the center of all these layers, right at the heart of this worldwide system? Who am I right here? Who are you right there? In other words, who are we really? Others can tell us what we are from a distance, but they cannot tell us what we are at center simply because they cannot get here. Others always remain outside us, distant from us. But each one of us is at our own center. So each one of us is perfectly placed to see what we ourselves are at center. I'm looking at my own center now, and I find here no face, no appearance. Instead, I find boundless transparency, a aware space full of the whole world. I cannot show you this space. Whenever you look at me, you'll always find something here. At that range you can see my face. But what I can do is invite you to look there where you are. to see if you're in the same boundless condition there as I am here. So let's see if this amazing claim about you, about me, about everyone is true. If it is true, and if awareness of this inner reality becomes the norm in society, I believe that all life on this planet will benefit. The first experiment I'm going to guide you through is the pointing experiment. In the pointing experiment, we begin by directing our attention outwards, observing that everything we see has shape and colour. Everything is a thing. Then gradually we direct our attention closer to ourselves until finally we're looking in, at the place we're looking out of, to see if we also have shape and colour, to see if we're things at centre or no thing, capacity for the world. Point at something in front of you and notice its colour and its shape. It's a thing. Bring your finger down a little and point at something else and notice its colour and shape. It's a thing as well. Now point down at the floor. I can see shades and patterns there in the carpet. Now point at your foot and notice its colour and shape. It's a thing as well. Bring your finger up your body and point at your knee. You can see the colour and shape of your knee, another thing. Bring your finger further up and point at your torso. Observe the colours and shapes there. It's a thing as well. Now bring your finger out in front of you and point back at the place where others see your face, the place you're looking out of. What do you see here? Do you see your face? Do you see your eyes, your cheeks, your mouth? Do you see any colours or shapes here? Do you see anything here at all? I'm not asking you what you believe is here. I'm asking you to put aside belief and take a fresh look. Rather than what you think is here, what do you see here? Or not see, in fact? Here's my experience. Looking in, I don't see my face. I see no eyes here, no cheeks, no mouth, nothing at all. Or to put it another way, looking in, I see emptiness. This emptiness is boundless, still, awake. I'm now seeing what I am at centre, what I am from my own point of view, what I am privately. I'm now going to guide you through an extension of the pointing experiment. This involves pointing in and out at the same time, two-way pointing. This indicates that the space at centre isn't just empty, it's also full. Looking in, I see the emptiness here at my centre, but I cannot see this emptiness without at the same time seeing what's filling it, my view out. This emptiness is now filled with my hands, the room beyond, and with various sensations, sounds, thoughts and so on. I find no boundary between the space here and the world there. My faceless consciousness merges with and becomes the world. Privately, I am the world. Of course, we remain aware of our public identities, of what we look like to others and to ourselves in the mirror. I'm aware that for you I'm Richard, and I identify with Richard. I identify with my face, my body, my name, my age, my thoughts and feelings, and so on. In other words, I'm aware of living a two-sided life. I have both a public and a private self. You can see my public self, but my private self is hidden from others. It's an inner secret. However, I believe that if you look there where you are, you'll see your private self, and you'll see that your private self is no different from mine. It has no face, no name, no age. It's capacity. If you're now seeing this faceless capacity where you are, then we're now sharing a wonderful secret, the secret of who we all really are. Of course, your view out from this capacity is different from mine, but the capacity itself, this boundless consciousness, is the same. Seeing that privately your space for the world is a different view of yourself from the normal view, the view of yourself from outside, the view of yourself as a person. Because not many people are yet aware of their private identity, then in a sense it's a new thing. Though of course it's not new at all. We've always been this aware emptiness, and throughout history many people have spoken about it. But if you haven't been aware of it, and then you come across it, it's normal to question whether or not this view is valid and true. For example, I can't see my face here, but I can see it in the mirror. Doesn't that prove that I have a face, that I'm not capacity at centre, I'm a person? There are also other questions that come up. Alongside questions about whether or not this view is valid and true are questions about its usefulness. If I remain aware of my private identity, what difference will it make in my life and in society? We'll begin looking into these questions in part 2. Hi. In part 1 we began looking at the difference between our public and private identity by doing the pointing experiment. First of all, we directed our attention outwards at things. Then we directed our attention inwards at ourselves to see if we are things at centre or no thing, capacity for the world. In part 2 we'll continue our exploration of our identity, starting with an experiment where we look in a mirror. We'll then continue with other experiments, exploring who we really are from different angles. These experiments invite us to take a fresh look at ourselves. They invite us to awaken to the truly blessed condition that is our innermost self. I can't see my face here, you might say, but I can see it in the mirror. Doesn't the mirror show me who I am? Doesn't it prove that I'm not space at centre? I'm a thing, a person. Let's look in the mirror and see what we find. When I look in the mirror, I don't just see what my face looks like, I also see where it is. It's there in the mirror, a couple of feet away, not here at my centre. My mirror shows me what I am at that distance, not what I am here at 0 distance. Here at 0 distance, I'm the opposite of what I see there in the mirror. There's my appearance, here's my reality, clear, boundless awareness. When you look in the mirror, you see a different face from mine. But do you see anything here different from what I see, this side of the mirror? Aren't you also looking out of faceless awareness? The mirror is a great device for showing me my appearance. It's one of the ways in which I become aware of who I am for others, aware of my public identity. But am I that person here at centre? No. Here I'm not Richard, I'm capacity for the world. What's your experience? What a great teacher the mirror is. It shows me that Richard is there at a distance from me, not here at my centre. Instead of finding Richard here, I find this clear being, this boundless capacity that's full of the whole world. What a joy not to be a person at centre, but to be the source and container of everything. And how wonderful that seeing who we really are is so obvious, so simple, and so available. But we're relying too much on vision, you might say. What happens if we close our eyes? Can we still be aware of being boundless, of being capacity for the world? Well, let's close our eyes and find out.
Con los ojos cerrados, ¿quién o qué es usted? ¿Cuán grande es? ¿Qué forma tiene? No se base en la memoria o en lo que los otros dicen de usted. Básese en lo que se da en el momento presente. Básese en su experiencia directa de usted mismo. ¿Tiene un nombre? ¿Qué edad tiene? ¿Es hombre o mujer? ¿Es humano? He aquí mi experiencia. Yo no puedo definirme a mí mismo. No tengo ni forma ni tamaño. Soy sin forma, capacidad sin bordes que está llena con todo tipo de cosas, sensaciones, pensamientos, sentimientos, sonidos y demás. Y yo no encuentro frontera que separe mi experiencia en algunas cosas que están dentro y el resto que están afuera. Todo está dentro de mí, dentro de esta vacuidad despierta que yo soy. Mis pensamientos, por ejemplo, están ocurriendo en el mismo lugar que los sonidos que puedo oír, aquí, en esta no mente, en este silencio. Privadamente, soy sin limitaciones, sin edad, sin nombre, el uno en quien el mundo está aconteciendo, lo cual es muy sorprendente. Por supuesto, puedo todavía recordar mi identidad pública. Por la memoria sé que para los otros soy Richard, pero yo no soy aquí y ahora Richard para mí mismo. Soy capacidad para el mundo. ¿Cuál es su experiencia? Privadamente, aquí y ahora. ¿Es usted una persona separada del mundo que le rodea o es capacidad para el mundo? Ahora, abra los ojos.
I find that having my eyes closed is no obstacle to being aware of this spacious capacity at my centre. It's as obvious with eyes closed as it is with eyes open. In the closed-eye experiment, we paid attention briefly to the location of our minds. Let's look further into this, but now with our eyes open. Where are our minds? Are they central, in our heads, separate from the rest of the world? Or are they at large, undivided from the world? Others tell me that my thoughts are in my head. I accept this way of thinking about my mind, the public view of me. My mind is here, yours is there. But my private experience is different. My thoughts are not in my head here, simply because I don't find my head here. Instead, I find boundless awareness. This awareness contains both my thoughts and feelings and the world. My mind is undivided from the world. Here's a way of illustrating this. I'm looking at this apple from the emptiness at my center. I see its shape and color there, from this shapeless, colorless space here. I'm also thinking about the apple. It's red, it's round, it's ready to eat. Where are my thoughts? Others say my thoughts are in my head, but I find no head here. Instead, I find capacity. Capacity that is filled both with my thoughts and the apple. My thoughts about things are not distant and separate from those things. My thoughts are out there, connected to the world. Obviously, others do not see my thoughts there in the world, but my experience is different. My mind is at large in the world. I find no dividing line separating my mind from the world. It's the same with my feelings. I feel pleasure in seeing the color and shape of this mango. I feel a desire to eat it. My feelings and reactions are not contained inside a person here at my center. They're out there in the world. My feelings of wonder merge with the snowdrops. My excitement isn't separate from the fire. I'm capacity for a world filled with feeling. When we live as if our minds are central, it's not surprising if sometimes we feel full to bursting with thoughts and feelings. There's a lot of things going on in a very small space. But when we see that privately we're empty of mind at center, that all our thinking and feeling is out there in the world, a great weight lifts from our shoulders. How good it is to be free of our minds at center, and how our minds love to be set free in this way. When we let them go back into the world, they breathe and expand. We become more creative when we don't hold on to our minds at center, when we're consciously open to the source. And we become more warm and generous-hearted when we don't hold on to our hearts at center, but let them be where they belong, out there in the world. Locating our minds and hearts out there in the world doesn't mean, however, that we ignore them or stop being responsible for what we think and feel. In fact, we're likely to be more aware and more responsible, not less. Our minds and hearts are no longer hidden inside us, but are out in the open, in front of us, so to speak, on show in the clear light of consciousness. And as who we really are, not only are we responsible for the thoughts and feelings that flow from within us, we're also responsible for everything, since everything flows from this incredible mystery at our center. Obviously, as people, we don't create the world, but as this mystery, we do. One of the situations where there's a striking difference between our public and private identities is when we move. If we go out for a walk or travel in a car, everyone around us sees us moving. But are we moving from our own point of view? I'm not. Here's an experiment you can do to see if you're the same. Point at your no face and slowly turn around. For others, you're turning whilst the world remains still. But is it the same from your point of view? Here's my experience. Beyond my finger I see the room going past, but this side of my finger I see no movement at all. Here at center I'm still. It's the world that's moving. Notice how this is true whenever you're on the move. When you're walking, you're looking from boundless stillness as the ground moves under your feet. When you're cycling, you don't move. It's the road that's moving, rushing past underneath you. And when you're in a car, enjoy watching the landscape flow into your stillness. You go nowhere whilst your destination comes to you. If we're only aware of our public identity, then we see ourselves as always on the move, and this can at times be tiring and stressful. We never quite stop, never quite rest. But if we're also aware of our private identity, aware of this stillness at the heart of our lives, then we find within ourselves profound peace and rest, even when we're rushing about. Being aware of this inner stillness is both deeply relaxing and energizing. We can't see our heads, you might say, but we can touch them. Let's do an experiment to see if this is true. Touch your head. What are you touching? I'm aware that for you, I'm touching my head, but my experience is different. This is the difference between the public and the private. From my point of view, my hand disappears into empty space here at my center, and then I experience lots of sensations, but they're not happening in a head here, they're happening in boundless awareness. They don't solidify me into a thing here, they don't limit me. Even whilst I'm experiencing them, I remain spacious and at large. What do you find? Do your sensations add up to a head there at your center, inside which you're living? Or are you capacity for your sensations, just as your capacity for everything else? Hi. In part 3 we'll explore how conscious facelessness reveals a radically new perspective on relationship. Then we'll look into how being aware of this awake capacity at our center might help us cope better with stress and with pain. We'll also see that our consciousness includes everyone and everything, that we're distant from nothing, and that we're looking out of a boundless single eye. One of the areas where it really makes a difference to be aware of our private identity is in relationship. I'm aware that publicly I'm face to face with others. For you now, I'm face to face with Muka. However, this is just the outside view of our relationship. From our point of view, it's different. Privately, we are face to no face with each other. I have Muka's face and she has mine. With the help of the camera, I'll show you what I mean. Here is my experience. I don't see two faces, only one, Muka's. Here I'm capacity for Muka. Instead of confronting her there with my appearance here, I'm built open for her. She is within me, face there to no face here. From my point of view, Richard has disappeared and has been replaced by Muka. In this sense, I'm not Richard, I'm Muka. Looking at me now, do you see your own face at the same time? Are you face to face with me or face to no face? Are you living behind an appearance there, closed off from everyone around you? Or are you built open for others? In reality, isn't everyone within your being? Of course, our views out from this space are different. For example, instead of having my thoughts and feelings in your space, you have your own. In such ways we're different. But I find here at center nothing that separates me from you. There I have your appearance. Here I find this reality that has no one's face on it, no one's name on it. It belongs to you, to me, to everyone. When we identify only with our appearances, it's not surprising if we feel separate from others, and then find ourselves acting from fear, from insecurity. But when we're also aware of who we really are, aware of our common identity, our relationship with others, and the way we act towards others begins to change. Others are no longer just other, they're also ourselves. Being aware that all are within us, that all are a unique expression of this one self, gradually our fear of others begins to dissolve and our hearts open. When we identify only with what we look like, we think of ourselves as inside our bodies. Then when we experience stress and pain, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and trapped. It seems that there's only the stress and pain, that there's no way out. But when we see that we're not inside our bodies are inside us, in this awake capacity at our center, we discover an inner sanctuary that's unaffected by our stress and pain. Being aware of this sanctuary doesn't make the stress and pain go away, but it does make available an inner detachment that means they're easier to cope with. Here's an experiment that explores this subject. Look at your hand. I'm not looking at my hand from behind my face here. I'm not distant from my hand. It's given right here in this spacious awareness. I can see the shape, colour and movement of my hand there, given here in this shapeless, colourless, motionless capacity. And I can feel the sensation of my hand there, in this sensation-free capacity here. Of course, I identify with my hand. This is my hand, my body, not yours. You have a different body coming out of the emptiness at your centre. But I'm not in this hand. It's in me. I am my hand because I'm capacity for it. Right now my hand feels relaxed. At center I'm neutral. I'm capacity for the relaxed feeling there. Making a fist, I now feel tension there, but nothing changes here at my center. Just as it's shape there to no shape here, so it's stress there to no stress here. At center I remain unaffected, free of the stress. Gently pressing my nail into my finger, I experience discomfort. The discomfort is there in my hand, not here at my center. When you do this experiment, what do you find? Being aware that our innermost being is never stressed or in pain can make a difference in our lives. When we attend to this safe haven inside us, we see that our stress and pain are surrounded by space. They're happening in stillness, in clarity. The stress and pain are real, but so is this clarity. And this clarity isn't affected by whatever happens within it. Being aware of our inner peace and freedom makes it less likely that we'll become overwhelmed by our stress and pain, or that we'll add extra stress to a situation by tensing against or resisting what's happening. Instead, it's more likely that we'll be able to relax and respond calmly and effectively. Looking in at my centre, at the place I'm looking out of, I find capacity, clear, boundless awareness. Looking out from my centre, I find the world. The nearest thing in the world that I see is my own headless body. You will, of course, see your body emerging from the emptiness at your centre. Each of us is capacity for our own body. Looking beyond our own bodies, we find other people. Being capacity at centre, our consciousness now includes others. There's a dividing line between our bodies, but no dividing line at centre. Looking out, we find many. Looking in, we find one. Reaching out and stroking my friend's dog, I'm capacity for her dog, face there to no face here. Each of us is capacity, not only for other people, but for animals as well. Outside in nature, my consciousness now includes the rest of life and the surrounding environment. At centre, we are one consciousness. Looking out from this consciousness, we find the whole world is within us, from this individual human body of ours to the furthest galaxy. This view of who we are has profound implications for the way we relate to others. Awareness of the differences between ourselves and other individuals, nations, religions and races is important, but it's only half the story. If this divided way of seeing ourselves is the only way we see ourselves, then it's not surprising if we experience fear, greed, hatred and conflict. But if we also see that at centre there are no dividing lines, at centre we are one consciousness, all are within us, then surely this awareness will make a big difference. This isn't just a nice idea to believe in. We can test it whenever we choose. So the question is, are we going to settle only for a half-truth that divides us and leads so easily to conflict? Or are we going to welcome the whole truth? The truth that all our differences are contained within this one consciousness at our centre. The future of the world, its peace and its health, may well depend on whether we say yes or no to the whole of ourselves, to who we really are. In the remaining part of part 3, I'm going to guide you through 2 more experiments. In the first, we'll see if our inner self is distant and therefore separate from anything. In the second, we'll observe whether we're looking out of 2 human eyes or 1 divine eye. There's not one thing in the universe that's distant from our inner self. Between any 2 things there's always a distance. Between my thumbs there's now a distance of about 10 centimeters. But what's the distance between anything in the world and the aware no thing at our centre? Measuring between the church there and the emptiness here, the ruler shrinks to a point. Not only that, there's nothing here at centre to measure from, to attach this end of the ruler to. The church there is right here, no distance away. Everything is right here, within this boundless awareness at our centre. How many eyes are we looking out of? For you I've got 2, but for me I've got 1. A single eye that's wider than the world. To bring your attention to your single eye, hold your hands out like this, like a pair of glasses. You can see 2 holes there, with a dividing line between them. Now put them on and see what happens to the dividing line. I find it vanishes. The 2 holes become 1. One single eye here that isn't even an eye in fact. Hold your hands out in front of you like this, and now bring them back past your head. Don't they disappear into your boundless single eye? And as you bring them forward, don't they come out of this edgeless space where you are? Whenever we choose, no matter where we are, we can see our single eye, this clear space that we're looking out of. And we don't just see a part of it, we see all of it. It's indivisible. nor can we see it imperfectly. It's always crystal clear for everyone. Of course, each person's response to seeing their single eye is different, and our own response changes over time. But what we're responding to, this clear inner light, always remains constant. Hi. At the beginning of part 1 I suggested that one reason for taking a fresh look at our identity is because there's an ancient body of wisdom that claims that we're not simply human. Outwardly we're human, but inwardly we're divine. However, I didn't ask you to believe this ancient wisdom, this claim about our identity. Instead, I rephrased it in modern terms, suggesting that what we are at centre is nothing like any of our regional appearances. In other words, what we are for ourselves at zero distance is the opposite of what we are for others, whatever their range. Then I invited you to look into your centre so that you could see for yourself what you are at zero distance. When we see our central reality, we discover that we're fabulously wealthy. Here's a way of illustrating our fabulous wealth. Hold your arms out in front of you so that you embrace your view out. Looked at from the outside, our embrace isn't very wide. How much can we hold between our hands? How much can we own? Even if we're rich, there's a limit. We don't own the stars. But the view from inside is totally different. The embrace of who we really are is infinitely wide. Between our hands we find the whole universe. There's nothing outside our being. We're wealthy beyond our wildest dreams. But what good is this wealth since it's private, not public? I can't do anything with my fields and rivers, my towns and cities, my oceans and stars. This is true. Our inner wealth cannot be exploited outwardly or put on show. But though we cannot spend our secret wealth or show it to others, though others can, of course, discover it within themselves, our own awareness of our infinite wealth confirms to ourselves the incomparable majesty and glory of who we are privately. Our innermost being is truly extraordinary. And when we say yes to this miracle, to this infinitely creative, rich, powerful and loving being that's within us, that we are, then its creativity, wealth, power and love flow into and bless our lives. Keep the door open to this beautiful mystery within you, and you'll be guided and helped in countless ways. Can I prove that this is true? No. But it's my experience, and the experience of many others, who say yes to what we are from our own point of view. If you're willing to look at what you are, and willing to say yes to what you find, I'm sure you won't regret it. In the remaining part of this film we'll do one more experiment to do with time. Then we'll look into how consciousness of our private self is a normal stage of human development. If we want to know what time it is, then we might look at our watches. I can see that it's now 4 o'clock. My watch tells me what time it is, there at that distance from me. there on my wrist. What time is it at 0 distance? Here at my centre, there at your centre. Well, let's have a look. Looking at my watch, I can see the second hand going round. The hands of my watch gradually mark out the passage of time. Movement, change and time go together. When I look here at my centre, I see no movement, no change, no time. Here at centre, I'm timeless. I'm looking from this timeless awareness here into time. And yet there's no dividing line between this timeless centre here and time there. Of course, I'm still aware that for others, I'm in time. Publicly, we're all in time, but privately, time is in us. So although outwardly time will outlast us, inwardly it won't. Psychologists say that our deepest fear is death. When we see that at centre there's no time and therefore no death, we see that our deepest fear has no foundation. The fact that our innermost being isn't a product of time, but is the source of time, is a truly majestic condition to find ourselves in. No king or queen comes anywhere near the majesty of who we all are at centre. However, being majestically above time, so to speak, doesn't mean that we ignore the world, for there's no dividing line between our eternal home and the world. Conscious of our timeless inner majesty, we're likely to find ourselves more involved in the world, not less. Throughout our lives, we're always two-sided. We always have both a public and a private identity. On the one hand, we're individuals in the eyes of others. On the other hand, we're capacity for the world. However, we're not always aware of our two-sided nature. There are potentially 4 main stages in our lives, and as we move through these stages, our attention oscillates between our public and our private selves. Sometimes our focus is on one side, sometimes on the other. The 4 main stages of our lives are the baby, the child, the adult and the seer. In the first stage of the baby, we were unaware of our appearance, unaware of our public identity. We hadn't yet learned to see ourselves through the eyes of others. Conscious only of our own point of view, our private reality, we were faceless, at large, space for the world, without putting it in these or in any terms. In the second stage of the child, we were becoming aware of our public identity. Seeing ourselves more and more through the eyes of others, we began learning to take responsibility for ourselves as individuals. In the process, we began overlooking our private reality. But our attention was inconsistent. Often we would forget about our public identity, completely losing ourselves in whatever we were doing. But as we grew older, these periods of unself-conscious openness and freedom came less often and went more quickly. In the third stage of the adult, we identify profoundly with our public identity. Seeing ourselves as others see us, we're in no doubt at all that we are what we look like. In this stage, we deny the reality of who we really are. It would seem that the price of genuinely becoming a person is the loss of our private self. We may not lose it for long, but lose it we must. Many benefits flow from becoming an individual, but though we may not know it, we're now cut off from our centre and source. It's not surprising if we find ourselves feeling that something isn't quite right, that we're missing something important. Fortunately, this need not be the end of our journey. We can go on to the fourth stage of the seer, where we discover the reality of our private self and begin drawing on its immense healing power. Seeing who we really are at centre, we now begin living a truly balanced, two-sided life. Private as well as public, public as well as private. One of the good things about losing touch with our private self as we grow up is that when we return to it, we see it with fresh eyes. It seems that we have to leave home before we can really appreciate what home is and how wonderful it is. And because our individuality doesn't disappear when we see who we really are, we can now celebrate our one consciousness with many voices. These stages are a map for our individual lives. They are also, in general terms, a map for humanity as a whole. In the distant past, human beings were not very self-conscious. We didn't have a strong idea of being separate from the world around us. More recently, we've become highly conscious of being human, of being apart from other life forms and the planet. However, this view of ourselves is changing. There are many indications that we're moving into the next stage, where we're aware not only of being separate from the world, but also of being capacity for the world. If you're aware now of being capacity for the world, then you're evidence of this change. Hopefully enough of us will awaken quickly enough to affect the general consciousness of humanity. The survival of civilization and life as we know it may depend on this shift in consciousness, on humanity recognizing that in reality it is capacity for other species and for the environment. In this film we've presented a traditional spiritual message in modern terms. The traditional message has been expressed in different ways, depending on time and culture. But one way of putting it is that we're not simply human, we're also divine. If we look steadily within at our divine nature, then our lives will be blessed. In this film we've described this spiritual message in physical terms. We're not at centre what we appear to be from a distance. Rather than asking you to believe this proposition, we've carried out experiments that test it, and then we've explored some of the implications of living consciously from our centre. This modern way of testing this ancient message was developed by the philosopher Douglas Harding. If you'd like to find out more about Douglas, then please visit our website. You'll also find there lots more information about this experimental approach.